Hi, this is Kristen Castleman here, and I'm joined by Grace Jones. Grace, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Grace Jones. I'm 15 years old. I'm in the 10th grade and I go to Roy City High School
And where is that located, Grace?
in Roy City, Texas.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be here with me today. So, I'm going to take you through a few questions related to social, emotional, or mental health, especially as that relates to mental health on a secondary school campus, which for clarity includes junior high and high school campuses. And just a disclaimer for you, Grace. Feel free to share as much or as little as you feel comfortable with. I will ask a specific question related to an incident at your school last year. So whatever you are comfortable with, I'm comfortable with as well.
All right.
All right, to start us off, can you share how many counselors your school has?
We have one emotional counselor and I believe like 4 to 5 academic counselors who don't do any of the emotional stuff. They just do academic things like schedules and all that.
Okay, so if you were a student that had questions related to your own mental health or accessing resources, you would be directed to just that one individual counselor who supports mental health?
Yes.
Okay. And if you had to guess, approximately how many students would you say attend your school?
I would say well over 1,000.
Okay. And just to clarify, your high school includes 4 grades?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So when you think about the resources that are made available to you as a student attending Roy City High School, what are some of those resources that are available to you?
The resources we have are pretty much just any teachers we're comfortable with, and those are really our own opinions we make from the beginning of the school year. And then we do have that one counselor, and we just kind of go to them whenever we feel needed, like we feel like we need it.
Okay. So what is that introduction of that counselor like? So for example, you're a sophomore this year, but last year you're new to the campus. How did they provide you the information related to reaching out to that individual should you need it?
The information wasn't exactly provided to all of the students, um, or at least it wasn't to me. I remember going through a rough day and I really just needed someone to kind of vent off to. And I went to my house office, which there's many different offices at my school because of the amount of kids. And I went to the one that I was designated to, and they said to go to this one specific counselor's office. And I went in there, and that was when I found out how to get a hold of him, whether it be through email or just like show up to his door kind of thing. There was no, hey, if you guys ever need a counselor, or you need to talk, go to him or email him. It was just, I had to go and ask myself. I didn't even know it was an option.
So had you not gotten to that point where you just really needed somebody to talk to in that moment, you might not have never known that support counselor was available to you.
I, I don't think I would have known about it if I didn't ask. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So when you think about the conversation of mental health, how often is that a topic of discussion or a point of reference made by your counselors or your teachers during the scope of the school year?
I think it's only ever brought up if maybe a student is struggling and either they're struggling enough for the teacher or another student to notice, or whether they bring it up, or during Mental Health Awareness Week. But even then, it's not exactly like a very personal, emotional kind of thing. It's just a kind of like a checkbox. Like
Mm.
they say they're here for us, they hand out some bracelets and some mints, and after that week is over, they go back to the way it was before.
How does that make you feel as a student, especially one that has had a need to, kind of lean in and ask for that support?
It makes me very upset about how us as high school students, especially this day and age, with the things are that we have had to go through and as like through society and everything, I think that they should definitely throw it out there more, especially seeing as how there are kids who don't speak up for themselves or who have
Mhm.
more going on and they won't. I think it should be more of a I think they should be a lot more open and honest about it instead of just kind of keeping it hidden unless you ask.
Yeah, mental health is something that we really should never be complacent about. We want to be proactive about providing our young people that level of support. 'Cause to your point, being vulnerable is not something easy for human beings, much less somebody who is going through those awkward teenage years. No offense. And making sure that they feel like there's multiple ways for them to access those resources, whether that be anonymously, potentially even at the start, or just knowing like, hey, you don't have to come physically walk and knock at my door to receive that support, but being able to, connect via a link that's provided by your school or some other way of being able to reach out to get that ball rolling.
Yes.
Um, so I think that probably answers this next question, but let me go ahead and ask just in case. Are there resources available in your classrooms too, or just in the counseling office?
Um, a, a little bit. I mean, it just personally for me, it depends on the classroom. I
Okay,
I have few teachers that I am very comfortable with and very open with, and I know that if I'm having a rough day, I can just go to their desk in the middle of class if I need to.
sure.
Um, but there isn't anything, any links, any posters, or even really much of a conversation unless again a student brings it up or anything like that. So I don't and that may be different in other classrooms, but for the majority of my classrooms that I've been in, there is no resources in the classrooms.
Okay, so the resource that exists then would just be a willing teacher who's able to have that conversation with you.
Yes.
Okay. So based on everything you shared in terms of, the attention your school gives or doesn't give to mental health, do you feel that mental health needs are adequately addressed at your school? Why or why not?
I don't think they are. Um, I think that there are certain staff members that will be there for a student who asks for it, but I
Mhm.
don't think that the needs are met. I think that the most that they do is they'll sit you in their office and they'll talk with you for hours. I went in there and I sat in that office with him for about 3.5 hours. And while it was nice, I do think that there was more that they could do because
Mhm.
I did have to find that office on my own and I had to kind of initiate everything. And for me being the people person that I am, that wasn't as much of a big deal. But knowing that there are so many other kids at in high school that don't speak up for themselves,
Mhm.
it it makes me very upset as to think that these resources aren't as provided as they should be for those specific students.
Yeah, it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to be vulnerable. And certainly, to your point, if you're not a people person, if you're an introvert, or if you're really struggling with levels of depression and anxiety, or something's going on at school or at home, and you don't necessarily feel like there's a safe space, or you don't know about it, to your point, what do you do?
Exactly. I think they should definitely have more options and more
Mhm.
resources available than just you have to go ask.
Absolutely. So let me switch gears a little bit and talk about interpersonal conflict. So issues that are happening between other students. Um, so, what process does your school have for creating space for students to report incidents of, bullying or where other students might feel like they're being targeted. If you see it or if you're experiencing it yourself, how do you go about bringing that information forward?
There's this thing on the IDs that we have to wear that's a part of our dress code. And it's a little QR code that we scanned. It's Bulldog Bark or something, I don't remember exactly. But you scan it, you fill out a Google form, and it should send it to, I think it's your house office. Um, or you go to your house office in person, you file a report, like a bully report, and that can be if, like for say, if I saw every day at lunch in the same place, this kid gets shoved around, for example, if I see that and I want to go, because I feel like if I go and help, it's going to be a danger to myself, but I think the kid needs help, I would have to go to the office and file a report. Or, if the same thing were to happen to me or someone I know. But I have had to go file a report before, and I will say I don't think that the school does anything, because after filing the report, I did not hear anything else for the rest of the school year. I
Oh,
had someone who was physically hurt, not majorly, just like kind of a slap on the wrist. They said that they would look into it, and that school year ended and nothing has happened. So I don't think that they're on top of it at all. I think they do it again for that checkbox aspect of it,
mhm.
saying that it's there, but they don't actually do anything about it.
So in that situation, Grace, do you feel supported by your school?
No, I think it's just so they can say that they have it for the administrators, and that's it.
And furthermore, knowing that there was no response or no action taken or follow through on their end, does that change how you would approach similar situations in the future? Like, do you see yourself continuing to report those incidents knowing that they may or may not be addressed?
That is something I've thought about and been back and forth on before. Well, my in my brain, I'm thinking, what's the point? You're just wasting your time. I also think that, maybe the situation I'm in isn't as serious as somebody else's. And even if it does take up a ton of my time, as long as I keep pushing for it, instead of just filling out one piece of paper, I go in there every day until the problem is solved and I know of it. As long as I think I shouldn't have to go do something like this, but I think that if it does come to that ever again, or if I do see anything, that I would go to the office, but I would be a lot more stern and I would put my foot down instead of just writing it on a piece of paper.
Well, certainly your perseverance is courageous and um, to be applauded. But to your point, your willingness is not always, necessarily indicative of someone else's, and so that
Hmm.
system needs to change in order to ensure all people feel supported in reporting incidents.
Yes.
All right, switching gears again. Your school had a campus lockdown last year due to an incident with some other students. Can you take us through just a little bit about that, and I'll have some follow up questions for you.
Yeah. So, the student, I actually personally did kind of know him. He was in one of my classes, and the main student. There were, I believe, three or four, including him. And I don't know all the details. These are just like the rumors gone round by everyone, but this was the most common and the one that I believe the most.
Mhm.
Um, I've been told that the main kid was, I believe he was being picked on, or he was just sick of this guy, and his plan was to, plan was to follow through with that kid and then end up shooting the rest of the school up at power hour, which is our lunch hour. Um, and I wasn't at the school that day, so I don't know how long they were on lockdown.
Mhm.
I don't know the details of it. I remember I was at a doctor's appointment. My mom gave me my phone and she was like, "There's something going on at your school. Here's your phone so you can talk to your friends." And my friends they were scared, they were worried, they didn't know what was going on. It was very, very unorganized. It was very chaotic as of all the details that I've heard. And I mean, I was terrified to go back the next day because I didn't know because of how unorganized it was. I didn't know if they for sure got everyone. But I do know that they found out because this one kid heard a rumor that they brought guns to school and they told him the kid's name. And it was one of the kids in the group and pulled him in, searched his backpack. And of course, he did have a weapon on him. And he fessed up and told them the other kids that were in the group. But at the same time, like, he's a high school boy. It's not unlikely that he could have lied and not told them everyone that's in the group. And that worried me because of how unorganized and unthorough it could have been.
Right, you have little to no information and you're trusting that the information you have is accurate. Um, and also that idea that like it could happen, but it won't happen to me. And then suddenly it did happen to your school. I think that, obviously has a significant impact or change to the way that you view the safety of your school. Is
Yes,
it
for
fair to
sure.
say that?
Oh, for sure. 100%.
So, my first follow-up question is, does your school have or participate in regular drills where you practice going into lockdown?
We do have lockdown drills, but I believe we only have like maybe 2, 3 max during a year. I don't know exactly. I
Okay.
do think we could have more, especially seeing our personal experience. But we do have them. They're just minimal.
Do those lockdown drills entail like specific reasons that you're locking down? Like, for example, actually, practicing locking down for an active shooter?
No, they're very, very just like kind of textbook kind of thing. There's no simulations, there's no banging on the door. They will they will let us know, "Hey, there's a lockdown during this period. We'll go about class as we would." And then, we go about class and the announcements play, it's a lockdown and they tell us what to do. We get in the corner of the room. Most of us are sitting on our phones with the brightness turned all the way up because it's a drill and
Mhm.
nobody really takes it seriously. Lock the doors, turn the lights off, and then the police officers, the principals, they'll walk the halls, you know, they'll make sure the door's locked and they'll just kind of barely peek inside to make sure you can't see us. And
Mhm.
then they'll unlock the door and they'll open it and they'll say, "All right, you guys are good to go back to class." And then we go back to class. There's no simulations, they're not very, very stern on it. It's just the idea of, "Hey, we did it." Even now after the incident, they're still not very thorough about the drills.
So would you say that as a student who's had lockdown drills both before and after that incident, you shared that students are on their phones and not really taking it seriously. Would you say then that it's that those lockdown drills prior to the incident didn't really garner any kind of emotional concern from the students themselves about what was possible or what you were actually preparing for?
No, I don't think so because even now, even the students that I know were even friends with the kids or that were obviously involved in the situation, they still don't really care. And I think that's because our
Mm.
school is so laid back on the situation.
So even having gone through that, those drills don't necessarily correlate the same emotional response to the potential for an incident like that occurring again.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the aftermath of that incident at your school, what resources were made available to those who were affected by what happened?
There really was no resources. I mean, personally, I expected them to at least maybe then say something about the counselor, but there was nothing. I mean, there were again those specific teachers who are like, "Hey, I'm here for you. If you're more affected, if you want to talk about it, like I'm here." Um, I personally had one teacher who, instead of teaching that day, he just sat us down and talked about it.
Mhm.
Um, and then the main head principal of the high school, she did send out a video that the whole entire school had to watch, but it was, to sum it up in a little saying, it's see something, say something. That's what she just kept repeating. If you see someone being bullied or hurt, say something. That was it. It was not, you know, it was not that was a tragic incident. If anyone is affected by it or needs to talk, you go here. There was no, I don't want to say personal. There was no emotional aspect of it. It was basically them saying, if you see bullying, say something about it. And that was it. I was very, very vague, even though I know that they know everybody knew the situation because
Right.
they were all involved in the situation. And they still didn't really explain any emotional help that they had.
That's disappointing. I know you shared it was hard to go back to school that next day. Um, as you think back to that incident, do you think that that had an impact on your ability to focus on your education thereafter?
I think personally, not as much as I think it could have.
Mhm.
Um, I struggle personally from general anxiety and depression, so even before the incident, I would zone out thinking worst case scenario, what could happen right now?
Mm.
But I think after the fact, it definitely made me think more like, okay, it's almost happened once. What's saying that it's not going to happen again?
Right.
The school didn't really do much after it. They added a few more security guards and now they enforce badges. But then again, they were all students at our school. Like I
Mhm.
had a class with one of the guys, which is even more stressful. And there are times where I'll be in the middle of doing my work or in the middle of a lesson and I zone out thinking, was that slam of a door a angry shooter storming out ready to go load his gun? Or
Mm.
was it just someone accidentally slammed the door? But it doesn't affect me totally, like in every second of every class.
Mhm.
It's just every once in a while my own personal anxiety will kind of spike and it'll just, now that it's
Invasive.
kind of, yeah, now that it's happened, now that I know it can happen, it's a big possibility in my brain personally.
I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. As a parent myself, it's, definitely up there with the worst nightmare type of thing to think about your child going through. And uh, I definitely encourage you to go back to your school administrators, and especially since you've shared that you are a people person, you have that persistence and perseverance to you, and demand a different levels of support and care for the students, different resources, and really advocate for yourself and for your fellow students.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Grace, for taking the time to really just offer a student's perspective to what tools and resources are available around mental health. And of course, it's an ongoing topic of discussion and growing importance as we continue to navigate the complex world that we live in. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, of course. Like, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.